So, welcome to today's edition of the White Rabbit podcast. And Alper, I actually wrote down the name The White Rabbit because a couple weeks ago we had a blooper where I forgot the name of the podcast. And
No
so,
big deal.
yeah, so I actually wrote it down so that I would definitely remember it in the intro for today. So, anyway, so Alper, we've got a guest on the podcast today.
Yes.
His name is Luka Krejči, and he's a presentation designer and trainer and recent author from Croatia. And over 12 years ago, he started a presentation agency in Croatia called Presentacija. Luka, my Croatian isn't very good. Did I get that pretty close? Presentacija?
Yeah, that
Okay.
more than good.
So, Luka, say hi to everyone, and don't worry, they won't bite.
Hi.
So I know Luka from the Presentation Guild. I was on the board there a couple years ago, and we were organizing the book club. And I think that's how I initially met Luka. Is that correct, Luka? Is that how we met, through the book club?
Yeah, I'm super bad at remembering past events, as my wife would for sure confirm, but that's how I remember it. Yeah.
Okay. So Luka recently published a book of his own, the Presentation Cookbook. And if I remember correctly, the language that he originally wrote and published it in is Croatian. And the English translation, which is available on Amazon, came later. And by the way, that makes 3 authors on the podcast today. Alper has published a book on presentations. Luka has published a book on presentations. And I published a book, but mine was not on presentation. So we've got 3 authors on the podcast today. So anyway, in a moment, I'm going to check in with Luka to see if I have missed anything in this intro. But before I do, I wanted to mention one more thing, and that is that I am completely jealous of the view that Luka has out of his office window. Because out of my office window, I have a nice view of the street, of the grocery store across the street, a couple apartment buildings. But before the podcast, Luka showed me the view outside his window, and it has the sea and the mountains. And so I don't know, Luka, if you're still able to rotate your camera, can you show our listeners what the view looks like outside of your window?
I'll try not to knock anything over.
Oh, wow. Look at
Nice.
that. I drool every time I see that. And also, go ahead, Luka.
Yeah, I'm sure, Alper, you're in Barcelona, right? So it's not that bad either.
The city's view is not bad at all, but I'm looking at the side of a building on my left and to a pedestrian street on my right. So I don't have anything close to what you have at the moment.
So anyway, back to the intro, Luka. In the intro, is there anything that I missed that you'd like to mention?
Well, professionally, I'm a presentation nerd, so you got that covered.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. Of course, I have a life other than presentations. I have a family. We discovered on our last call that we both like mountains and hiking. So there's other things, but I think we stick to presentations this time.
Okay. And before I forget, tell our audience members if they want to get in touch with you, Luka. Where can they find you?
If you Google my name, which is a hard thing to do because of the, the letters. But try Luka Krejči or the Presentation Cookbook, the name of the book. And the best place to connect is LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so that would be probably the best way.
Okay. And so now on to the main topic for today, the book you wrote. And for starters, Luka, I'm wondering, what problem were you trying to solve with this book? Like, what problem are your book's readers having that reading the book might help them figure out?
That's a great question. And the way I usually start my workshops, this is what I do most of the time, presentation workshops. I usually start with asking the audience a very simple question, and that is, out of the last 10 presentations you received, how many out of those 10 were good? By mean good, I mean clear, interesting, and persuasive. That's good. And I think you can already guess what the usual answer is.
It's
Zero.
probably pretty close to zero.
Not zero, but I would say 9 out of 10 people say it's 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, that's a pretty low bar.
Yeah, that sounds pretty realistic to me. Pretty low bar.
So most of the presentations are not very good, right? It's very easy. Although we don't have this feeling when our own presentation is concerned, because when everybody asks somebody how was my presentation, people usually respond, great.
Nope. Nobody's ever going to say, "Oh, your presentation was awful. I fell asleep."
Yeah. So we want to keep the relationship good, so we are polite. But when you ask people, most of the presentations are not good. So that's a real problem. And we usually in business, when you have a presentation, it's something important, right? You need to you have a sales presentation, you have an investor pitch, you are proposing a new project to the management or to a colleague. So it's really important stuff. And you have no clue how to do it because nobody ever taught you. So that's what it's about.
So let's give our listeners something that they can use to boost their numbers up above these 0 or 1 or maybe 2. So what's one of the top things that people could do to not be giving a presentation that is utterly forgettable and boring?
The first thing is taking presentation seriously. And that's kind of a motto of mine. If you take presentation seriously, like a proper job, because it is, then you also have seriously good results.
Okay.
Meaning the first thing is you cannot start working on your presentation the night before you have it. Which is in 90% of the cases, it's the way how people do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And when you do it this way, you didn't even give yourself a chance to do a proper job, because the night before, when you're tired and stressed out and you have 2 hours, you cannot do anything that is remotely interesting or appealing.
Okay.
So starting on time, having this right mindset, and then what the whole book is about is I didn't invent anything new because there's no need to do it. And I have a feeling that's what we are trying to do, reinvent the wheel. And the presentation is a story.
Okay.
In essence. And there are people far smarter than me that know how you tell a story. What are the components of the story? What are the main things you should be concerned with? If we take the slides, the physical part of the presentation, we are discussing about visual communication, which again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from advertising, from whatever you want. There's so much knowledge about visual communication, although we write bullet points instead of doing the visuals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of a Word document that is just saved as a PowerPoint file. That's most of the presentations. So it's about learning from other disciplines, other arts and sciences, and putting this all together, because all of those little puzzles in the end make a great presentation.
You mentioned something in there. You mentioned it's basically a Word document in another format, but it's basically a Word document, and that triggered something in my memory. We had a guest recently who talked about how before people in her department, before people make a presentation, or before people even open up PowerPoint, she has them write out what they want to say in Microsoft Word and read that out loud. What do you think about an approach like that?
Yeah, I'm always for not starting in PowerPoint or any other slide building software.
Okay.
I prefer paper rather than Word. And what you want to say, it's just one of the 6 basic questions that you need to answer on this piece of paper. And that's the concept of the presentation.
Okay. Luka, so let's get back to the book for a moment. And if I am, let me make up a hypothetical example here. Let's say that I don't know, I'm a supply chain manager, or I work in production or in marketing, or, something like that. So how would reading your book help me?
It gives you a
Uh,
process. Uh, and the book is called a cookbook,
yeah.
right? A presentation book, because it has
Okay.
recipes. A recipe isn't a guarantee that you will have a most fabulous dish, but it assures that you have a higher
Yeah.
chance of doing something that works for sure, right? Because somebody wrote the recipe.
Okay.
So it gives you a process, it gives you tools, specific tools, how you come up with the story, how you come up with your visuals, which chart do you choose when you communicate number, and also the important part, and that's why it's the first chapter of the book. It gives you the mindset that you need to do,
Okay.
which I already said. It's a proper job.
Yeah.
A presentation is job like any
Yeah,
other.
it's job like any other. So in a moment, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Alper, for questions. But I have one more question for Luka before I do that. And the question that I have for you, Luka, is that for years you've made your living as a presentation trainer, and then you decide to write a book. That's a pretty big mindset change to go from thinking I'm Luka, I'm a trainer, to I'm Luka, I'm writing a book. So just walk me through a little bit, like, how did that mindset change happen?
In our pre-call, you said, what in the world possesses somebody to
Yeah,
write a book, right?
that's basically my question is, what in the world possessed you to write a book?
It's a good word, because you really feel possessed when you start. You bite it and you don't let go until you're done. Uh, but it wasn't a change. I wanted to write a book maybe 2 years in when I started my company about presentations. I just never had time or the idea how to do it. And it was for the better. I think it's much better that I didn't do it immediately, but after 10 years, because I'm much more knowledgeable about it. And I had the concept. Uh, and the concept was born when the cookbook
Ooh, yeah,
part of
yeah,
the
yeah.
title hit me. Because I was struggling. In these 10 years, 3 or 4 times I started writing and then I bailed out because I wasn't happy with
Okay.
it. And only with the word cookbook. Cookbook.
Okay.
Cookbook has recipes, and recipes are structured in different groups like desserts, soups, and whatever. And in 5 minutes, I had the whole concept, how to do it. And then COVID struck, which was super bad for
Sure,
everybody like
sure,
me in doing
sure.
trainings, because everything was canceled. But on the other hand, it gave me
Okay.
time. I was sitting at home, so I had time to
And it
write.
sounds like the word cookbook kind of helped you crystallize your thoughts and or organize your thoughts.
Yeah.
I think of, like, metal filings on a piece of paper, and metal filings on a piece of paper, they're sitting all sitting around all disarrayed, and then you pass a magnet underneath the paper, and they all fall into line. So this word cookbook was kind of like that. It's everything fell into line when you realized, yeah, this is a cookbook.
Yeah, even though today I don't think it's a really good name, because when you write Presentation Cookbook on Amazon, you get a lot of cookbooks, for food. But I'm so attached to it that I can't let it go.
First of all, I like the name Presentation Cookbook, but I think that's funny. Like if you go to Amazon and type in Presentation Cookbook, you're gonna get a bunch of books about how to stuff a tomato or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and by the way, you also present foods, so there's a bit of there's some overlay there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's
sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Luka. What else is on your mind?
No, I just wanted to jump on what Alper said. It's very similar to cooking presentations because that's the quality of the meal itself. That's your presentation, and then it's how you present it.
Exactly.
If the waiter is not smiling and he's very rude, he's going to ruin your meal, right? It's the same with presentation. You need both.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we have all been through the situation in which a food can be delicious, but the way presented makes it less so. Like it comes on the plate, it's not nice. I'm sure it's delicious in its essence, but your first impression is towards a more negative way, and just because of the way it's presented, not because of the way it is cooked, not because of the quality of the ingredients, but just because of the way it is presented.
Yeah, and in my mind, I'm always more the content guy, so I'm always content first. The meal has to be delicious, and that's why this book is not about presenting. Actually, right now I'm writing a sequel to this, which is about presenting. This is about the quality of the meal itself.
Nice.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're writing the next version or the second book, and you've also mentioned before that you enjoyed writing the first one so much that you have already leaped into writing the second one. So what was it that turned you on so much about writing this first book that made you say, hey, I want to write a second one now too?
The reason is what we just discussed. The final effect of your presentation, is it a success or not, will depend on both. And in my line of work, I do workshops on both topics, so it's only rational to tackle also the other topic of delivering your presentation if you want to have a full product that increases your chances of getting a yes at the end of your presentation.
True. So, and Alper, I don't want to hog all the questions here. So what's on your mind? What do you want to ask?
Actually, what's on my mind has something to do that happened right before we started recording, and I think it's completely in line with presentations. That's why I'm going to ask for both of your opinions, actually, but primarily Luka's.
Okay.
For the viewers, what happened was before we were recording, we asked Luka to rotate his camera and to show us the view outside the office because Matt talked so highly of it. What happened was the view of the camera was the source of the image. Matt saw a bunch of bottles by the window, and I paid attention particularly to a large crane by the seaport. I didn't see the bottles, Matt didn't see the crane, but we were looking exactly at the same image at exactly the same time. Which brings us back to the presentations. I design a presentation, I go out there, I show the slide, and I may expect people to see what exactly I put on the slide, but the reality can be completely different. So part of the audience may see what I intend, another part of it can completely miss the message. Now, at this point, I think this is a huge risk to take as a presenter. So, Lucas, I would like to ask you, how can I make sure that whatever I deliver, I intend to deliver, let's say, on the presentation, is perceived by the audience without any mistakes or any other way that I had in my mind?
I don't think you're like my answer, because the answer is you don't.
Okay.
Whenever you work with humans and presentations are still human to human, there's always a risk. And for me, I can see this very clearly because some of my workshops, I did the most successful one, I did more than 200 times, the same workshop. And some line sometimes goes really well. And maybe in 90% of the cases, people are all excited about it. But every now and then you have the audience that doesn't react at all to this, which is what makes us human. So the recipe, as I said, it's not a guarantee. It increases your chances of success. And with each presentation, you learn something, and maybe next time you'll be a bit smarter about it.
Okay.
I wonder what Matt version is of the answer.
Well, first of all, Alper, I wanted to add to your point there a little bit in that before the podcast, I swore that next time I looked out that window, I was going to see that crane. And when Lucas started talking, I started realizing, even though I swore to myself I would see the crane, I did not see the crane at all. I didn't see it at all. Like, I have never seen the crane. I've looked out that window 3 times now, and I have never seen the crane, or even more, I guess. However, the bottle of Jack Daniels,
that tells a lot.
it just sticks in my mind and it won't go away.
It's called a fixation.
Yeah, it's called a fixation. So, and I would agree. I definitely would agree with Luka that this is not something you can control. There are a bunch of ways that you can try, like for example, if you are showing a graph, and let's say it's your typical bar graph that goes up and to the right. It's your typical up and to the right bar graph. If you want to point out, there are a billion ways that you could point out, what you could highlight one of the bars, you could, mention it in your spoken conversation, blah, blah, blah. There are a million ways you could try to get people to focus on that bar, but man, if they are not going to see that bar, then they're just not going to see that bar. And you just, like Lucas says, you're presenting to humans, and there's a lot that you can't control. So I guess you can try to control it, but most of it's out of your control in the end.
Yeah, we are very similar in how our brain works, but we're also different. And for sure, a situation when you have this super cool chart on your slide, the hockey stick chart, goes up to the right. And then out of all of what you're saying, somebody raises their hand and says you have a spelling mistake on a slide. Right? Yeah. So, like you see the Jack Daniels bottles and Alper sees a crane, and you can influence, and you should consciously influence what people see and hear, but ultimately you cannot control it 100%.
Of course, 100% there are no guarantees. Yeah.
Alper, other stuff on your mind that you want to ask?
Well, my question was going to be about the impulse that made you write the book, but Matt already asked that. Maybe I will jump in with a follow-up question. I think you mentioned that there was a long gap between the first initial impulse and actually getting down to writing the book, right? And you already mentioned that it was the idea of the cookbook that came to you, and then it put a lot of things in motion. For the next book that you're going to publish, do you already have like a framework in place?
Yeah, because I really see it as a sequel. So the name will be the Presenting Cookbook.
Okay.
So I'll keep the cookbook concept. Now when I jumped in that pool, I'm going to the end. Uh, so again, we'll have recipes. It would be an evolution. It won't be 100% the same as the first book, but the concept is quite similar. I will ride this wave until the
Okay.
end.
So a person reading, when the two books are out there, a person who has access to them would have a very clear understanding of how to start the process from the beginning, generating
Yeah,
the content, as I understand, designing the slides, and with the second book especially, how to deliver it more impactful. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's right. That's right. Because you need the full package.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I started my presentation company now 13 years ago, I started with only the content part, which is also in this book. But people then ask, okay, I now have a clear idea of what I should be saying and what my slides should be looking like, but I'm very bad at PowerPoint. And then I started also doing PowerPoint courses to teach people how to not to lose 5 days with something you can do in 1 hour. Then afterwards, people
Mm-hmm.
said, great, now I also have a great PowerPoint, but I'm really nervous before delivering, and this ruins the
Yeah.
whole experience for me and the audience. I don't know what to do with my hands. That's the second question that people have, you know,
Yeah.
right? And so I call myself a presentation expert. And if you're a presentation expert, all of these different things belong to the area of presentations. I'm not a
Yeah.
slide expert. I'm presentation expert, and that's why I need to look under each and every stone uh, where things go wrong, and how to do it better, because we can do it better. There are not a lot of them, but there are great presentations, right?
Mm-hmm. Why do you think you got into this?
Ooh, that's a deep question. To me, uh, so previously I was working in a large multinational company.
Mm-hmm.
I was leading the corporate strategy department, and which involved a lot of presentations, right, to the
Yeah.
management board and so on. And I always kind of liked presentations and wondered why some presentations went well and others didn't. Uh, Also, I always had an idea that I will have my own business one day. Unfortunately, all of my ideas required several million euros of investment. Uh, so one day I just said, enough, stop. What do you know to do? You know presentations, right? Start with that. And then later you find a proper business. In the end, it turned out that this is proper business, right?
Yeah.
And doing this for
Yeah.
13 years. But now looking back, I think it's very clear why I ended up doing this. My first love and what I wanted to study was architecture. I couldn't draw. I can't do it today. And to pass the exam to study architecture, you need to draw. So that went out of the window.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second thing I like is psychology. But then I thought, wow, what will I do? I'll be a teacher in some school. You cannot make a lot of money out of that. So psychology is out. And then I studied economics, right? You don't know what to do. You study economics. Looking back, what presentations are, it's a perfect match of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not 3D, it's 2D structure if you are
Yeah.
looking at slide. It's psychology because it's about how you communicate and how you convince people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's business. So it's a perfect blend of the three.
Yeah, I don't know
I don't
who
know, how
said
does
it.
this sound? Does it make sense?
It makes absolutely perfect sense because I don't remember what I heard, but I think the phrase was something like 80% of economy is psychology. I would say even a higher percentage of presentations has everything to do with the psychology. Because in its purest sense, you're putting yourself out there in front of the people. And
Yeah.
it's not just about your content, your slides, even where you put your hands anymore. It has got a lot of it has got so much to do with what is going on inside your own mind. So when you say it's a perfect combination of those three, I think it makes absolutely perfect sense.
Yeah, and that's the books I like to read the most.
Hmm.
You know, Kahneman, Tversky, Ariely, and all of this psychology and behavioral economic stuff, because that's what it's about.
And by the way, I cannot believe in the similarities that you and I have had because I started my company in a bit more than 12 years, 14 years actually. I took about several years writing the book. From the idea to the publishing, it took several years. Unlike the only difference was I started as a slide geek, as a slide designer, and then I transformed the business into the trainings and what it is today. But I'm so fascinated by the stories of people who follow a path and end up there. So in your case, it was a pleasant experience to hear your story.
Yeah, but I think your path is the usual one. Because some people who are in the presentation space I follow for years. Uh, for instance, the Michael Jordan of presentation, Nancy
Yeah.
Duarte.
Yeah.
Yeah, starting out with slideology, then going more into storytelling
Mm-hmm.
structure, and ending up now in leadership and coaching.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people going this same route.
Well, slide design may sound like a more noble cause for my beginning, but my actual beginning was because I realized that I needed to get better at presenting. Not because I liked it, but I had a desperate need if I wanted to succeed professionally to get better at it. So they were pretty low standard at the time. That's why I had to learn, and after learning, the business evolved into actually training.
Yeah. And it still is. The standard is still low. As I
Thank
told you,
God. Thank
9
God we have business.
10.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell my students that it's good news because it's so easy to be better than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just do 20% of what you read in my book or in your book, perhaps, or Nancy Duarte's book. You take 20% and you're a superstar.
Yeah. The day that changes, we will need to start for looking for new work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to evolve. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all benefiting from working in a field that's where our trainees are overcoming a very low bar. By the way, Luca, you mentioned psychology, and you know a big part of the theme of this recording, of course, is books and stuff. So I just wanted to give a shout out for one of my favorite books that I'm reading these days because it's kind of on psychology. Uh, it's called Alchemy by Roy Sutherland. Have you heard of that book before, Luca? Alchemy.
I didn't heard about the book. I heard about the name. I know
Ah,
who this guy is, and I will for sure check the book out because
yeah.
he's a great guy.
I started. I've kind of been binge listening to any interview I can get my hands on with Roy Sutherland because he's very funny. He's funnier
Yeah.
than many professional comedians, and he's not a professional comedian. I think he's an ad man or something like that, right? He's like the
Yeah, he works in a marketing agency.
yeah. He works in a marketing agency, it's like one of the big ones. It's a worldwide name,
I think
Ogilvy.
it's Ogilvy or something like
Yeah,
this.
Ogilvy, and so he has this book. I highly recommend it. It's like I say, it's called the book is called Alchemy, and how it brings up psychology is that the premise of the book is that humans are less logical than they like to think they are, and he spends an entire book diving into that particular idea. It's a pretty interesting book, so if you get a chance, I highly recommend it.
I'm check it out. And my first venture into this whole field or psychology was Dan Ariely's book, Predictably
Oh,
Irrational, which is
oh,
Yeah,
that's
a
a great
yeah,
one.
gem
that's a good one.
book. And yeah, and
Yeah,
it's a great
definitely.
name because what you just said, we're irrational, but we're predictably
Uh-huh.
irrational. So you can predict how people will react to certain stuff. It's a book that
Yeah,
blew my mind.
yeah. It's that idea that humans are you can predict how we're going to be crazy. It's a pretty powerful idea.
Yeah. For
Uh,
the foreseeable future, people will start preparing for their presentations the night before. It will be irrational, but it will be pretty predictable, probably.
It'll be very predictable. So on that note, so we've got to wrap up for today. So I wanted to thank you, Luka, for joining us today. It was a great pleasure to have you, and I wish you the best of luck with your book.
Thank you for having me. And I have to check out also Alper's book because I didn't know about it. So that's also on my list, besides the alchemy one.
Okay.
Yeah, and Alper, tell us about your book for a second. So it's what languages is it in? It's in Spanish and Turkish. So Luke, I think you
At the
would need to know
moment,
both,
Turkish
right?
and Spanish, but the English is coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
So at the
I know a little bit of Spanish, so
ah
maybe I'll give it a
Okay.
go.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think,
because I love Spain. I go every year to Spain almost.
when are you coming next?
I don't know. Last year I was in Barcelona with my wife, actually. Uh, Before that, I was in Malaga, Cordoba, and
Hmm.
so for me, if I can see myself living anywhere else other than Croatia, it's Spain.
Well, let me know next time you're here.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will have you again when the sequel is out, and we will talk about that.
yeah. By the way, Luca, before we go, is there any? Do you have any prediction about when the sequel is going to be out, or is it still an unknown?
Uh, I've written maybe 80%, so not
No way.
for the
Nice.
writing part. But now,
Wow.
as I know how the process goes, writing is just half of the work that needs to be
True.
done,
True.
Hmm.
especially with the way I'm doing books. And this is basically, I'm showing you a page from my book. It's a lot of comics. It's a
Yeah.
lot of everything. I even have slides in
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
There's a lot to it other than writing.
Yeah.
I hope until the end of this year, Croatian version will be out, and then maybe next year, the English one.
All
Okay.
right. Excellent.
Okay.
Well,
Well, it's good to have you.
yeah. Thanks again, Luca. And so Alper, I'll see you on the next episode.
Yep. See you.
All right. Take care. Thanks,
Take
Luca.
care.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.